A person in Louisiana has the first severe illness caused by bird flu in the U.S. The CDC says the patient had contact with sick and dead birds in backyard flocks. No word on the patient's condition.
Now, for the first time, officials say an American is seriously sick. They say the patient from Louisiana is hospitalized, over 65, had underlying medical conditions, and caught the virus from sick and dead birds in their backyard.
This means that risk isn't necessarily just contained to farms, but is broader, and this is why public health officials are concerned.
Today, a major health story the U.S. is keeping its eye on. Health officials confirming the first severe case of bird flu nationwide. The CDC says a person on Louisiana was in contact with sick and died birds and backyard flocks. It's the first bird flu human case linked to a backyard flock.
The person who has contracted this latest case of the bird flu lives in Louisiana. But unlike the 60 other cases, the CDC says this case is severe, so much so the person is hospitalized in critical condition. And while most other human cases involve commercial farm workers, this is the first case of someone getting the virus from a backyard flock.
People should be alert, they should be vigilant, but not scared. It really reminds us all to get flu shots right now, because if you get infected with both bird flu and human flu, they can exchange genes and really make a variant that is more easily able to enter the human body and make us more sick.
And joining me now, just what is the threat to the general public?
The good news is, Lester, the CDC says the threat is low. There's no evidence of person-to-person transmission. It has all been from infected animals to humans. So the advice is to avoid sick or dead animals. And if you own a backyard flock, you're a hunter or a bird enthusiast, wear personal protective gear, gloves and masks when dealing with the animals. The same is true for farm workers.
Okay, man.
The United States has now reported its first severe human case of bird flu in a resident in Louisiana who is hospitalized and is in critical condition after suspected contact with an infected backyard flock.
Backyard flocks.
The virus from sick and dead birds in their backyard.
And backyard flocks. It's the first bird flu human case linked to a backyard flock.
This is the first case of someone getting the virus from a backyard flock. And if you own a backyard flock, you're a hunter or a bird enthusiast, wear personal protective gear, gloves and masks when dealing with the animals. The same is true for farm workers.
Okay, man.
This is the Nations Conspire channel. Welcome to today's show. I have been warning about this for a few years now. And if you start reading between the lines, when the propaganda media puts stories like this out there, if you read between the lines, you should be able to see exactly where this is headed. See this headline? U.S. reports first severe human case of bird flu in a patient hospitalized in Louisiana. Every single person that hears that or sees that, whether they're not afraid or are afraid, are thinking to themselves that, oh my gosh, I might get the bird flu. Hopefully they release something so I can go and take that magic potion that they provide for me for free so I could be immune from the bird flu, even though they'll tell me I'm not immune for it. The other half of the people see this and they say, holy crap, are they really going to try to create another pandemic and lock us down and force us to go and get a shot for a bird flu? But what you really should be doing is going further, because the psychosis is further than that. That's basic level when you're looking at these stories. That's what everyone's thinking the second that they see it, one side or the other side. It's that. But it's deeper than that. Read right underneath that headline. The CDC said that the person who got the bird flu was most likely exposed to the virus from sick or dead birds in a backyard flock. Let me emphasize, in a backyard flock. They are going to continue to go out of their way to make sure, to make certain that they have full control of the food supply chain. Everybody out there, obviously like us, who thinks like we do, whether they're still in the left-right paradigm or not, thinks about survival, thinks about this is a government we can't trust, right? I'm going to farm on my own. I'm going to grow all food on my property. I'm going to have chickens and eggs and maybe even some cattle. The government knows this already, and they know the only way they can have full control over you is by controlling the food supply chain. This is New World Order 101, right? So when they put that sentence out there, backyard flock, it's for a reason. Let's just basically look at what that means. A backyard flock is a group of domesticated birds kept in a backyard for a variety of reasons, including companionship, food production, and pest control. Keyword, domesticated birds, which means you have birds in your yard which belong to you. But that's the problem. They belong to you. And remember, in a communist global order, nothing belongs to you. And in America, it's really an illusion of freedom, because we all know that the way this taxation system is set up, nobody really owns anything. You could pay off your house. You'll never really own your land, so you don't really own your house in the first place. Nobody owns anything in this illusion of the American dream. It's part of the mirage. But people do tend to still think that they own their children, right? Not own them in a bad way, but own them. They belong to them. They can make the decisions for their children. Well, not in global communism, not in community communism. You might have pets, cats and dogs, and say, well, these are my pets. I'm going to feed them the way I want to. I'm going to keep them in the house day and night. I'm going to monitor them and watch them and make sure they're safe and protected. That all sounds great, right? But not in global communism. And if you think you're going to farm on your own independently from the government, think again, because not in global communism. So what I'm getting at is real simple. The stories that are out there have people jumping up in anger about the fact that there is a state of emergency and worried about another potential lockdown and quarantine, which again, we should never have allowed the government to get away with in the first place. So the stories that are out there are bird flu is coming for humans. We can either get ready or court disaster. Experts sound the alarm as more human bird flu cases are reported. But what you should really be looking at are these stories out there. Same day that the state of emergency is released, mRNA from CDC and Moderna protects ferrets from current avian influenza strain. That comes out the same exact day, but there's more than just that. There's this from October, which I've discussed for years, because everybody who's awake should be looking at these things ahead of time and knowing what's coming. The second they announced the bird flu, the first thing I started talking about was the food supply chain. A few months ago, chickens made resistant to bird flu with CRISPR gene editing. So they're announcing that they've created something, but they don't want you to be, too suspicious. So they've given it to ferrets. All the ferrets who have been given the shot have survived. Any ferret who was not given the shot died from the bird flu. So people are automatically thinking, well, they're doing it on ferrets. It's going to take time before they do it to humans. No. It's going to take no time before they start telling you that humans are getting it, humans are getting it, and start blaming it on people who might have them in their backyard. Because the first thing everybody was thinking about was big corporations who have chicken farms. Everyone was thinking about Purdue. Everyone was thinking about some of this GMO chickens that are raised in the farms that we've all seen in documentaries over the years, the horrifying details of how they make these chickens and how these chickens live before they're slaughtered, right? Well, no. The goal is to get the CRISPR in the farms. I talked about this yesterday. I've talked about it for a few years now. CRISPR passes from the meat, from the animal, to the human. Like I said, just like they told us that certain people who went and lined up and got the experiment done on them in 2020, that it wouldn't pass to infants through breastfeeding, that it wouldn't pass genetically. Well, of course they lied about it, because they lie about everything. And when you call them out on it, they're nowhere to be found, because they're never held accountable. In fact, they actually have an army of brain-dead zombies who protect them from any type of pushback, because we have narcissist brain-dead zombies who want to think that they've done the right thing instead of actually realizing that they're poisoning themselves and, in some cases, their children. So the same exact day that the state of emergency is released in California, they're talking about blood serum taken from vaxxed ferrets was also able to neutralize the virus taken from a Texas patient who contracted bird flu after coming into contact with dairy cows in March of 2024. Dairy cows, by the way. We're talking about a bird flu that all they need to do, again, because repetition's the key to mind control, is somehow convince you that a flu that is specifically for birds can now be caught by cattle and humans, right? So shouldn't even be called the bird flu anymore. But people don't pay attention to these things. They don't think independently or freely anymore. And they think that the things that these scientists and these doctors tell them is in fact 100% factual without saying, that's weird that a cow could get a bird flu. Is a cow a bird? No, it's not. So why does it all of a sudden have it? Oh, well, because it mutates, right? Remember when they were convincing everybody that mutation was a thing and it could mutate from this to this to this, and that's why you'll never be immune. And that's why those people will always be suckers in our world. And most of them have a ticking time bomb inside of them that's gone off, and quite a few of them already. So in all of these articles that are out there right now about this person in Louisiana who got it, they continually are using the word backyard flock. The CDC said the patient was likely exposed to the virus from a backyard flock, which would mark the first time such a flock has been associated with a bird flu infection in a U.S. resident. They go on to say the patient is over 65 and had underlying medical conditions. She did not address questions about the patient's symptoms or her backyard flock. It says no person-to-person transmission of bird flu has been documented, which is important, which is their way of telling you that the only way anybody out there is going to get it is from a chicken. So that means that what? If humans aren't going to give it to other humans, that means that the only culprit for all of this is going to only be chicken. So all we have to worry about, ladies and gentlemen, is the chicken. And everybody goes, whew, good. All right, it can't go human to human. So we could split up the social distance. They go, nope. I don't got to go get anything in my body because I have to worry about so-and-so getting it. Well, do you work in a chicken farm? No, I don't. Well, then I won't worry. Does your neighbor have chickens? Oh, yes, he does. I do live close to a farm. Well, we'll worry about your neighbor and his chickens then. And we'll make sure that they don't give it to you, maybe by breathing the air that you're breathing, maybe by being within 200 yards of each other. What can we do? Yes, we can, because we've been doing tests on ferrets, and we realized that if we give them this CRISPR shot, which we've now done in chickens and found that it works and makes chickens immune. Now the chickens are all going to be cured of the virus, and everyone's going to go, yay! And then all of a sudden, all the food supply chain involving poultry, independent farmers, you, me, it's all infected with CRISPR. So then when you eat it, guess what? It's transmissible to you. So they don't have to worry about you going to Walgreens or Ralph's or CVS or whatever pharmacy you go to and taking their bait where they offer you free Visa gift cards. Instead, you're going to feel relieved that you're not being bombarded with that. And when they come and knock on your door, you're going to be clueless to it all because they're going to come knock on your door, just like I said in my recent video about Peanut, the squirrel in New York. And they're going to say, hey, we heard you got chickens in the back. Because your neighbor, who suddenly didn't care that you had chickens, now cares, right? Because your neighbor's paranoid because of the propaganda. And your neighbor's going, oh my gosh, that guy up the road, he has chickens, right? Well, I don't want to get sick. Wasn't he one of those I better call somebody and make sure that, I report them to make sure that they're safe and they have their tests. Well, maybe I'll go to their door and ask them. They go to their door and ask them and they say, get off my property, man. I don't have to tell you what I'm doing with my chickens. So she calls, just like the person called about the squirrel on Twitter or the squirrel on TikTok, whatever it was. And people went to the door and they put that story out there for a reason so you could expect it, right? Because people probably didn't even know these organizations existed that would come to your door and tell you that they can give a rabies shot to your squirrel, right? Nobody knew that that was a thing until that story about the squirrel came out. That's why it was national news. It's to condition you. That's how it all works. So now everybody knows that story, whether they knew the squirrel or not. Everybody heard it. They're like, what? Who came to the door? The government came to the door and euthanized somebody's pet squirrel? And they're like, well, it's not their cat. It's a squirrel. It's a little weird. They thought it had rabies. The whole point was so that you realize that there are government agencies that have the right, supposedly, to go and do that. And you can expect them at your door when they suddenly tell you that this thing is spread to New York, to California, to Florida, to everywhere in between. And then suddenly they say, hey, we've got it under control because we've gotten it in all of the big companies that sell chicken at the grocery store. And everyone will go, good. But they'll go, there's a problem, though. There's independent people out there that have these chickens. And you could get it from their chicken. Your cat, your dog can get it. Anything can get it from them. We need to make sure that every chicken in America has it in there. And then it becomes an option. Well, you either get your chicken to get the CRISPR in it, or they're going to euthanize your chicken, because that's how this is going to work. And suddenly, chicken, which most people believe is healthy, is no longer an option and no longer healthy because it's contaminated. And you who thought you were going to grow chickens and have your own eggs organically are suddenly in a pinch where you say, you know what? I guess I better go vegan. Well, guess what's coming next? Don't you know that they're already doing CRISPR experiments? They have been for years, and getting this stuff in your tomatoes, in your lettuce, in your carrots, getting it in everything. All they have to do is create the psychosis like this. Convince you for a couple years that the bird flu is all around us. Everybody rolls their eyes thinking that this is something to do with the government trying to create another pandemic and locking everybody up, right? So that's where their focus is. I'm not going to put a mask. I'm not going to do those things. And they're going to come in and they're just going to go, hey, we're not going to tell you to do that, but we got to get this under control. It's a bird flu. The birds have it. We got to make sure that we take care of them because they're going to give it to you or give it to your neighbor, give it to someone else. And you're not being a good person by not doing it to your own chickens because this affects your neighbor. So we're going to have to overstep our boundaries here. And we're going to give you it's safe because look, when they give this to the chickens aren't going to die on the spot. You're not going to hear any stories about chickens dying from this CRISPR shot. What you're going to hear about the chickens being healthy and happy, right? Because the point is that they want you to just get in the chicken. They want you to think the chicken's going to die. They're going to prove to you the chicken's not going to die. No one's going to realize it's about getting the CRISPR from the chicken into us, into the food supply chain, because that's how this works. This is gene editing. This is the psychosis that we're in now. This is their game plan. They are not giving up. I said this when it occurred. Many people said it who were awake when it occurred. They're not going to stop until it's in everybody, okay? They don't expect, after the last one occurred, for you to go and willingly do this again. They expect half the population to go and do that because half the population is completely brain dead. They don't expect a lot of people to do it. In fact, they know through the data, through everything you've posted online, I've posted, everything everybody's posted, right? Because remember, the internet is really you uploading your consciousness. So through everything that everybody's posted, they know nobody's going to put up with that again. That's why they're going this route. Because once it's in the food supply chain and it's everywhere, even if you're trying to avoid processed foods, even if you only eat food on your property, they're coming to your door to get this in your food. One psyop after the next. If that's what it takes, that's what they're going to do. So after this story came out in October, which the New York Times, all of the fake mainstream media outlets reported this. Even websites that had paywalls allowed you to read it for free. Scientists use CRISPR to make chickens resistant to bird flu. And the underlying message in all those articles was this: the research is proof that we can move forward making chickens resistant to the virus via this CRISPR shot. We're almost there. And guess what? They're there. They're just waiting for your compliance to it. And believe me, the response so far to the stuff with the state of emergency is everybody looking at Trump, looking at Newsom, looking at crazy liberals and liberal laws and overreach and paranoia, and nobody's paying attention to what CRISPR really is. Let me make it clear. It's transmissible. They've been doing CRISPR experiments for a long time. They openly admit it. CRISPR is already in our food supply chain. CRISPR is already in a lot of the meats that you probably buy at the grocery. This is for everybody else. This is for people like me and you. This is to give them the right to knock on the door, to say, we're going to check your chickens. We're going to make sure your chickens are registered. We're going to make sure your chickens got a shot. Somebody wrote under my video the other day or yesterday, one of these days, about the chickens that they have in their yard. I think they said they got a Tractor Supply, if that person's out there. I said, I got my chickens at Tractor Supply. They literally wanted my ID, my address for me to purchase the chickens. Well, what do you think that's about? You think Tractor Supply is independent? It's a chain. Tractor Supply works with the government, right? And Tractor Supply, you could bet your bottom dollar, is told by the government to submit whoever comes here and buys chickens. We want to know that they're buying chickens. And you think when you make the purchase, it's innocent. Whatever. What are they going to do? Come and take my chickens? No, they're going to come and take them. They're going to come and poison them. Well, with the goal really being to poison you. So pay attention to this as the stories continue. It's not going away until they come out and they tell you the solution. And people are not going to overreact to it because it's going to seem calm compared to what they just did. And people are going to go, whatever. viruses are real and things like that, right? You heard Trump come out and talk about polio recently. Did you hear him say that he agrees with the polio shot, right? The shot that, shedding really was born with, where people realized that shedding was real from polio. You don't hear about it now anymore, of course, because too many years have passed by. Trump's on board, just like Operation Warp Speed. He was on board. You won't hear chaos and pushback because nobody will be thinking about CRISPR because nobody understands this. It's too many layers. There's too many layers to this. If it's not injected into you directly, then suddenly you go, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. Yeah, it'll be in everything and all things. That's their goal. However they have to create the psyop, they will do it. Keep an eye on the stories. Keep an eye on the backyard flock. There's going to be more stories about it, about independent people, because they know in the hive mind, these people are thinking about big companies because they all get their food at the grocery. And that's going to be their concern. And they're going to go, yeah, it's actually happened outside of there because Purdue and all these guys, they went with Moderna, they got them all, and they're all safe. It's all these people out there who are doing this in their own property. They'll show a bunch of rednecks on the news probably, right? Create a story. This farm refuses to get their chickens taken care of. The man up the road ended up in the hospital. The man up the road's in a coma because this family farm didn't go and get theirs to get this potion. And he bought a chicken from them, or he went on their property, or somehow he got it from these unvaxxed chickens. There will be many psyops around it. You could bet your bottom dollar. Just wait for it. I thank everybody for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families, as always.